Welcome back to SportsLine, everybody, right here on NewsChannel 5+. We continue our conversation with Tom Hodges, former Morehead State women's basketball coach, of course, an assistant at Middle Tennessee State with the great Rick Ensel. Coach, you were known for your flashy outfits back in your coaching days, those loud checkerboard jackets and in the school's colors. I mean, who was your tailor back in those days? I was looking up some old pictures of you on Google today. Yeah, you had a flair for the wardrobe, my man.
We did. So quick story. When we got to Morehead, Kentucky, John, we didn't even have our own newspaper. So we were really scrambling, trying to figure out a way to market, to promote. You've already touched on it. I've got a little flair for promos and people with gift of gab. So we had a wild hair to reach out to the same outfitters of John Daly that plays on the PGA and Senior PGA Tour, a company called Loudmouth Golf. One of those ideas, John, that is great idea in the middle of the summer, but upon implementation became really larger than life. It's funny, people don't remember how many games we won, how many games we lost, the championships we won, the championships we lost, but they remember the suits. It's fun. We still have a ton of that stuff, and yeah, we had a good time with it.
Sounds like you did. Of course, before going to Morehead, you were an assistant at Middle Tennessee State, worked with the legend, the Hall of Famer, Rick Ensel. What'd you learn from Coach? He's a friend of our show as well. Just love the guy. He's just, he describes himself as an old country boy, but he's one heck of a coach, too. What did you learn from him, and what did you try to take, from Murfreesboro to Morehead, Kentucky when you went?
Yeah. If you put me in a corner and ask me who the best, the greatest, the most outstanding teacher of the game of basketball is, I would put Rick Ensel there on the top of my list. And I've been around a lot of great women's coaches, a lot of great men's coaches, traveled the world following basketball. Rick Ensel values the fundamentals, values the details more than anybody, more than any coach I've ever been exposed to. The practices aren't flashy. There's no secret drill. There are no secret offenses that he implements. Quite honestly, I can remember coaches in our league in Conference USA coming up to us before the games that, I know what you're going to do offensively. I know what you're going to do defensively. And there's not one thing I can do to counteract it. You know how frustrating that is?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of his success, of his longevity, treating everybody the exact same, from our managers to our custodians to our All-American WNBA draft picks. Didn't matter one bit. Coach Ensel treats everybody the exact same, with the same amount of respect and the same amount of expectation. If there was one thing, and Kermit Davis used to say this all the time about Coach Ensel, if there's one thing Rick Ensel does, he gets you out of your comfort zone. No matter if you're playing for him or if you're working with him, he's going to get you out of your comfort zone and force you to a greater good. And it was a pleasure working with him for 10 years on his staffs, and can't recount enough good memories that we had together.
Yeah, no question about it, I'm sure. You've gone on to become a very successful businessman. You own your own business, doing great there. How much do you miss coaching, Coach?
I miss it. I do miss it, especially these times of the year, NBA Finals. I'm a basketball junkie. Around March, when the tournament kicks off, that's like Christmas to me. Right now, all of my college colleagues and brethren are out on the recruiting trail chasing the next stars, and there's an adrenaline rush to that. So I miss those things. I miss practice. I miss games. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it ever truly gets out of your blood. I tell people I just have a different team to coach now that happen to be truck drivers and America's highway heroes.
That's right. Goggin Cold Hall, coldest team in town, proud sponsor of the WNSR's Nashville Sports Radio and the Greg Pogue, Jon Burton Show, and we thank you for that, Coach. I want to talk about college basketball and name, image, and likeness in a second, but first I want to stick with the NBA. Obviously, you know, for about a decade now, we've been in the super team era. You know, we never saw that in the 80s, you know, growing up watching Bird and Magic, and then later on Michael Jordan and Barkley and all those guys. Those guys would, you know, we talk about it all the time. They would never dream of teaming up with each other. They wanted to beat one another. Now you see stars teaming up with other stars in order to maybe get a quicker route to a title. Now, when you look at the 80s Lakers, they had, you know, 3 Hall of Famers on that team, and Worthy and Magic and Kareem. And, of course, you know, Bird played on the greatest front line probably ever. Those 3, I believe all 3 of those guys, Bird, McHale, and Parrish, are all Hall of Famers. Later on, you know, Charles Barkley and Scottie Pippen and Hakeem tried to, you know, team up in Houston. So it's not really unprecedented. But what do you make of the super team era? Is it good or bad for the NBA?
Well, you know, John, I'm a purist, so in my heart of hearts, I love to see a player drafted to a team and they become the face of that team and that franchise and that media market, that town really grows with that player. That's just my basketball purist at heart as a NBA fan of the 80s. That's what I enjoy the most. Now, I'll be honest with you, I loved watching the Nets this year just because they were entertaining. At the end of the day, they had a high entertainment factor when James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving were on the floor together. So, you know, the constant shuffling and having to spend 3 or 4 days in the offseason just to figure out who had moved teams and who's playing with who now, that becomes a little taxing to me. But at the end of the day, the basketball is probably as good as it's ever been on an athletic level. And we're seeing that pursuit of championship, that win at all costs, really take over. What's neat about it to me, John, even in that environment, we've got 2 teams in the NBA Finals that are counter to all of that.
Right.
Two teams that are built from hardworking, blue-collar players that might have been passed over in years gone by, that have taken small market franchises all the way to the pinnacle of basketball.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, switching to college basketball, one of the stories that I have to keep reminding myself is that Coach K at Duke announced this is going to be his last year, man. I mean, you know, Coach K goes back to as long as I've been watching college basketball. I grew up in the Syracuse area. You know, Boeheim is still coaching at Syracuse. He's never going to retire. I never thought I'd see the day where Coach K would step down. How significant is that? You know, you're seeing Roy Williams and now Coach K, and I'm sure, you know, Jimmy Boeheim at some point is, you know, someday soon is going to hang it up. These legendary college basketball coaches that we grew up watching and loving or hating or whatever are all starting to slowly walk away from the game. It's a real game changer now in college hoops, no?
It really is. It's a generation of greats that we're seeing. Thankfully, they're being able to go out on their own terms and set their own farewells. So there's very few people, take sports out of it, there's very few people that are known by a single letter. when you think about Mike Krzyzewski, he has transcended all levels of not only basketball but humanity in his reach from what he's done in Durham, North Carolina. Another one whose simplicity, whose approach, I've been to many Coach K practices, and there aren't any secrets. There's no super secret offense or defensive strategy. His secret sauce is communication and his love for his guys, and that is powered him to 5 national championships, countless Final Fours, and a legacy that nobody, especially in the next 2 lifetimes, will reach or ascend to.
No question about it. All right. Well, obviously, across the landscape in collegiate athletics, name, image, and likeness, it is a feeding frenzy right now. I never thought I would see a day when it would finally happen, but for those that don't know, collegiate athletes can now make money off of their name, image, and likeness. We've seen some big deals happen already. The twin basketball players at Fresno State, Master P's kid who's coming to play here at Tennessee State, just signed a $2 million deal. I mean, how crazy do you think it will get in the immediate future? And is there going to have to be some kind of burden or onus on either the NCAA or the federal government to kind of step in and regulate this, because this could really get out of hand?
Well, so we're a week into this, and it's already opening some doors that people never even thought about, and they're coming to fruition. 1 weekend, the story of the University of Miami football team, every player going to be under contract to a private gym down there for a total of $6,000. Every player will get a $500 stipend just to endorse a gym. The Cavender twins that you mentioned, their TikTok subscribers up to 4 million, and signing a deal with Boost Mobile to be their national spokeswomen. So that, I think the corporate side of things will be pretty well regulated, John. I think what's going to get really murky is how much now is a player's autograph going to be worth, because it's so subjective. It's so dependent upon what somebody's willing to pay. And there is no market. There is no structure to govern that. I think that's where it could get a little seedy. The other piece is the taxes. You know, all of a sudden, these amateur athletes aren't so amateur anymore, and are going to become 1099 employees to whoever they're endorsing. That type of structure, the sole proprietor structure in the tax code, then changing their status on maybe a Pell Grant. And how does that work with their grant and aid? There's a lot of layers of complexity. That's one thing I don't envy from my college kinfolk right now, and the college administrators, because there's a lot more questions than there are answers.
Yeah, Tom, and my biggest fear, and I think you kind of touched on it and alluded to it, it's just that, you know, let's face it, you know, the world is what it is. There's a lot of shady, scummy people out there that are going to want to take advantage of these young men and women. And these kids, and they're still kids in my book, and you know, they better be 100% sure that they vet whoever they're getting into business with, make sure they're not signing something that they're going to regret having signed later on. I mean, I see the potential for a lot of really ugly stories and a lot of, you know, not so pleasant 30 for 30s and outside the line specials coming up down the road. I hope that's not the case, but we know how people are. We know, you know, how a lot of people like to benefit off the backs of the people that do all the work, and they reap all the benefits. So I'm hoping that's held to a minimum, if that makes any sense.
It makes all the sense in the world. And if you've been around athletics at all, especially college athletics, especially in the South, you know how rabid fan bases can be, and how opportunistic fan bases can be. So all of a sudden, the metric has shifted. The tail is in fact wagging the dog right now. And my concern, John, is how do you police this? How do you trace it? How do you regulate it? In my mind, I don't see how there's any way that you can truly police any of this. It has become a free market. The last bastion of amateurism is out the window, and it's truly going to become a farm system. Now, don't get me wrong. I think college players should benefit. I do think they should be able to monetize themselves and their hard work. That's America. That's the American free press and the American dream.
Right.
But the way in which that's done, I don't think anybody has really put their thumb on chasing the dollar and how do we follow those dollars to make sure everything stays on the up and up? I think it's impossible, and I don't envy anybody at all, especially in the administrator seat, that's going to be charged with that task.
Olympics right around the corner, Coach. Obviously, Team USA will be a big favorite to win the gold medal. Who would you say is the biggest threats out there for the red, white, and blue?
Yeah, I think Australia is probably a great medal contender. Slovenia, we just saw with Luka. They're going to be making their return to the Olympics. That's going to be a great story. So the Olympics is always fun because you get a nice mix of NBA superstars littered on some world teams, and then some players that might stay in the EuroLeague that we don't get to see very often, and then all of a sudden they have great tournaments and great games. I am also excited about, this is the first year for 3-on-3 basketball in the Olympics. That's going to be fun to watch, a little bit different style. And this men's basketball Olympic team has some different a different type of makeup, some different names that we haven't seen that have had great years in the NBA that are going to get a chance to shine on the highest of high stages representing our country.
All right, a couple more questions with Coach Hodges here. I asked you about my New York Knicks this morning. What do they have to do to pull off a trade to get Dame Lillard in New York, in Madison Square Garden? Can we make it happen, Coach? Come on, give me some good news.
Well, I think they can make it happen.
Okay.
Now, it's going to take a little bit of work, and they've got to be able to hold on to Julius Randle.
Yes.
I think how much tread on the tires did Derrick Rose have left? Derrick Rose plus a boatload of picks, possibly. The Portland Trailblazers hold all the cards in this because Dame Lillard signed the big Supermax extension a couple years ago that goes into effect this year. So in all due respect, they hold the cards. Now, we've seen 11 times out of 10, when a superstar gets disgruntled, the superstar gets their way. So no matter who Dame Lillard lands with, they become an instant contender. I can't think of a better market for him to land in than the Big Apple. And imagine the Garden absolutely rocking with him at the point, Julius Randle, Tibbs on the sideline. It would certainly be a pretty neat era to usher in Knickerbocker basketball.
All right, Coach, we'll get you out of here with this. Who wins the NBA Finals? Obviously, Phoenix is already up 1-0. Do they finish the job? Do they get 3 more wins, or does Milwaukee come back and win this series? And who wins and how many games, Coach?
Jon Burton, Suns in 6.
Suns in 6, says Coach Hodges. Okay. Well, I'd love to see it. Like I said, I'd love to see, because you got to remember, Phoenix was a basketball city before it was anything else. I know they have all 4 major sports, but before anything, and we're going back to Garfield Hurd and Paul Westphal, and of course later, right? And of course later Charles had, he won his MVP as a Phoenix Sun. They had Thunder Dan Marley and Kevin Johnson, and man, they had some really great teams, could never get over the hump. I remember, hearing Charles Barkley say, that year we went to the finals, I thought it was, God wanted us to win the finals, and then I realized God wears number 23 for the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah. I was always a big Oliver Miller guy for the Suns. I related to Big Oliver out of the University of Arkansas. The Trail 3. The big man can knock down. But it's a great time. It's a great time to follow basketball. Excited to watch these NBA Finals. I think they'll be very highly well played, highly contested.
Coach, I can't thank you enough for doing this, taking time out of your busy evening to spend a few minutes with us here on SportsLine. Love your inside basketball knowledge. We obviously, Greg and I, enjoy having you on our show on Nashville Sports Radio. Glad we're able to do this. Like to get you back on and get you in studio when we open things up, which is going to happen very soon.
That is a deal. Thank you very much, John. You are a great American.
So are you. Thanks, Coach. Have a great night, all right?
All right, bud.
All right, there he goes. Coach Tom Hodges. Great to visit with him here on SportsLine. We'll take another break. We'll come back with more fun right after this. Stay with us.